The strange signal came at exactly 3:17 a.m. Dr. Ju Kim had almost fallen asleep at her desk when her computer started beeping. She had spent 10 years looking for signs of life from other planets, and now something unusual was happening. Ju blinked at her screen, not believing what she was seeing. The signal pulsed in perfect patterns that couldn't be natural. Her hand shook as she pressed the intercom button. "Tahoe, come quickly," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Tahoe Park rushed into the room, his lab coat wrinkled from a long night of work. He leaned over Juwoo's shoulder, his eyes growing wide as he studied the screen. "This isn't random," he said slowly. "These patterns are too perfect. Something intelligent is sending this." "Or someone," Juwoo replied. They worked through the night, analyzing the signal. By morning, other observatories around the world began reporting the same findings. The signal was coming from deep space, far beyond our solar system, and it was definitely artificial. 3 days later, scientists from 23 countries joined a video call to share what they had learned. Juwoo represented South Korea, bags under her eyes from lack of sleep. "We've managed to decode part of the message," said Dr. Yamamoto from Japan. "It appears to be an announcement." The room fell silent as the translated text appeared on everyone's screens. Notice of integration. Earth designated for hegemony membership. Preparation period. 6 standard months. "What does that mean?" someone asked. Nobody had an answer. 2 weeks later, the first alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit. It was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, and shaped like a smooth, dark teardrop. Military forces worldwide went on high alert, but the ship made no aggressive moves. Instead, it sent a message requesting a meeting with Earth's leaders at the United Nations headquarters. World leaders gathered in New York, surrounded by nervous security teams. President Min-ho Lee of South Korea insisted that Dr. Ju Kim attend as a scientific advisor. "You found the signal first," he told her. "You should be there when we meet them." The alien delegation arrived in a smaller craft that landed on the UN grounds. When the door opened, humans got their first look at extraterrestrial life. Ambassador Krill stood nearly 7 feet tall with a hard, shiny exoskeleton that reminded Juwoo of a giant insect. He had 4 arms and walked on 2 legs, his movements precise and graceful. Behind him came 3 similar beings, each carrying strange devices. The UN Secretary General welcomed them with shaking hands. "On behalf of humanity, we greet you in peace." Krill's head tilted slightly. When he spoke, a device on his chest translated his clicking sounds into English. "Your welcome is noted. I am Ambassador Krill, representative of the Galactic Hegemony. I bring news of your world's upcoming integration." The room buzzed with whispers until the Secretary General raised his hand for quiet. "What exactly does integration mean?" he asked. Krill's 4 arms moved in a complex gesture. The hegemony spans 327 species across thousands of worlds. We bring order, technology, and purpose to all developing planets. Earth has been assessed and deemed suitable for membership. President Lee stepped forward. "And if we wish to remain independent," Krill made a sound that might have been laughter. "Independence is inefficient. The hegemony optimizes all resources. Your planet will serve a purpose in our greater design." Juwoo felt cold fear spreading through her chest. The ambassador wasn't asking for Earth to join. He was informing them that they would be taken. "How advanced is your technology?" she asked, unable to contain her scientific curiosity despite the tension. Krill turned his large compound eyes toward her. "Your technology is quaint but sufficient for basic membership. You will benefit greatly from our knowledge." "And what do you expect in return?" asked the Russian president. "All member worlds contribute to the hegemony according to their abilities," Krill replied smoothly. "Resource extraction quotas will begin immediately after formal integration. Population management protocols will follow." The room erupted in outcry. Population management. Several leaders shouted at once. Krill remained perfectly still until the noise died down. Your current population uses resources inefficiently. Optimization will benefit both Earth and the hegemony. You're talking about reducing our population, Ju said, her voice steady despite her horror. Correct, Krill responded without emotion. The process is painless and logical. President Lee stood up straight, his face hard. We reject these terms. Earth is not yours to take. Krill's body language showed no concern. Rejection is noted but irrelevant. Integration will proceed in 6 months. A detailed outline of expectations will be delivered tomorrow. He turned to leave, then stopped. I should note that resistance is strongly discouraged. The last species that resisted no longer exists. He tilted his head again. We look forward to Earth's contributions to the hegemony. After the aliens left, the human leaders sat in stunned silence. Finally, the Secretary General spoke. We need to prepare for diplomacy or alternatives. That night, Ju couldn't sleep. She stood at her apartment window, looking at the stars that now seemed threatening instead of beautiful. Her phone buzzed with a message from General Jae-yun Kang of the Korean military. Meeting tomorrow. 800. Bring your research. Tell no one. As she set down her phone, Ju noticed a small drone hovering outside her window. It wasn't human-made. She quickly closed the curtains, her mind racing. The aliens were already watching them. They had 6 months to figure out how to save humanity from becoming just another resource for the galactic hegemony. Ju hoped it would be enough time. Outside, the alien mothership glowed faintly against the night sky, a dark promise of changes to come. The thick document landed on the conference table with a heavy thud. It was bound in a strange metallic material that seemed to shift colors in the light. Secretary General Haijin Cho stared at it for a long moment before reaching out to open it. The official terms of Earth's integration into the galactic hegemony, announced Ambassador Krill. He stood at the head of the table, his 4 arms clasped in front of his chidness body. The 20 human representatives from various nations sat in uncomfortable silence. Dr. Ju Kim, seated near the back as a scientific advisor, leaned forward to get a better view. The document was printed in multiple languages, with English on the top page. As Haijin read the first few lines, her face paled. This can't be serious, she said finally. Krill tilted his head. The terms are standard for planets of your development level. Haijin stood up, her voice shaking with anger. You expect us to give you 30% of all Earth's resources, water, minerals, food, everything. Correct. The quota is reasonable and sustainable, Krill replied. And you want to reduce our global population to 2 billion people within 50 years? President Minho Lee asked, his knuckles white, as he gripped the table edge. Your current population is inefficient. Optimization will reduce strain on your ecosystem while providing adequate workforce numbers. The Russian president slammed his fist down. And what happens to the other 6 billion humans? Natural attrition will be supplemented by reproductive restrictions, Krill explained as if discussing the weather. No direct elimination is planned unless resistance occurs. Jumu felt sick. She looked around the room, seeing the same horror reflected on every human face. Haijin flipped to the next page. It says here we must provide military conscripts for your expansion forces. Yes, Earth humans have shown remarkable adaptability and aggression. These traits are useful for frontier operations. You want to use our people as soldiers in your wars? The American president asked. The hegemony does not engage in wars. We conduct integrations, Krill corrected. Your species will benefit from the structure and purpose we provide. Haijin turned another page, her hands trembling. This section states that all existing governments will be dissolved and replaced with hegemony administrators. Correct. Your current political systems are fragmented and inefficient. Haijin stood up straight, her voice finding new strength. Ambassador Krill, these terms are completely unacceptable. Earth will not surrender its resources, reduce its population, provide soldiers for your conquests, or dissolve its governments. We reject these terms absolutely. For the first time, Krill showed a reaction. He made a quick clicking sound that the translator didn't catch. His compound eyes seemed to focus more intensely on Hyjin. "Your response is unusual," he said finally. 98% of species accept these terms without resistance. Your biological and technological development level does not typically produce such defiance. Humans are different, Juwu found herself saying. All eyes turned to her, but she continued, "We value our freedom and our right to self-determination." Krill's antennae twitched slightly. Freedom is an inefficient concept. The alternative to acceptance is the standard pacification protocol. And what does that involve? General Jaehyun Kang asked from his seat by the door. His voice was calm, but Juwu could see the tension in his shoulders. "Detailed explanation is unnecessary," Krill replied. "It would be regrettable. Many useful resources are damaged during pacification." The threat hung in the air. No one spoke for several seconds. "The integration fleet is already approaching your solar system," Krill continued. "You have 30 days to prepare for the formal integration ceremony. I suggest you use this time to explain the benefits of hegemony membership to your population." With that, he turned and walked out, his strange gait making him look like he was gliding across the floor. 2 other aliens followed him, carrying devices that constantly scanned the room. After the door closed, chaos erupted. Leaders shouted over each other, some arguing for immediate military response, others suggesting desperate diplomatic measures. Hyjin called for order, her voice cutting through the noise. "We need to stay calm and think clearly. If their fleet is as advanced as their technology suggests, a direct confrontation would be suicide." "So we just surrender?" the British Prime Minister asked. "No," General Kang said quietly. All eyes turned to him. "We prepare, carefully." As the meeting broke up, Kang approached Juwu. His eyes darted around, checking for surveillance. He leaned close to her ear. "Meet me tonight at the old observatory. 9 o'clock. Bring your best people." Juwu nodded slightly. "Who else will be there?" "Scientists, military strategists, engineers, anyone who might help us find a way out of this trap." Later that night, Juwu drove through the rain to the abandoned observatory outside Seoul. It had been closed for years after newer facilities were built, the perfect place for a secret meeting. Inside, she found 20 people gathered in the main dome. She recognized military officers, scientists, and government officials from several countries. General Kang stood in the center. "Thank you all for coming. Every person in this room has been carefully selected for their skills and discretion." "What's the plan?" asked Dr. Miwa-yoon, South Korea's leading weapons engineer. Kang's face was grim. "We have 30 days before the main fleet arrives. We need to find their weaknesses." "Do we know they have any?" someone asked. Juwu stepped forward. "Everything has weaknesses, even the hegemony." "Dr. Kim is right," Kang said, "and we're going to find them. Officially, Earth's governments will appear to be preparing for integration. Meanwhile, we'll be building the biggest trap in human history." Juwu looked around at the determined faces. They had 30 days to save humanity. The odds seemed impossible, but as she exchanged glances with her fellow scientists, a tiny spark of hope flickered to life. Outside, distant thunder rolled across the sky, as if Earth itself was preparing for the coming storm. The abandoned subway tunnel beneath Seoul had been converted into the main command center for Project Earthshield in just 10 days. The air was cool and damp, filled with the hum of computers and the voices of people from different countries working together. Large screens covered the walls, showing maps, data, and live feeds from around the world. Dr. Ju Kim walked between tables where scientists hunched over equipment. Her eyes were tired from lack of sleep, but her mind remained sharp. 3 weeks had passed since the aliens had delivered their ultimatum. Only 9 days remained before the main fleet arrived. "Dr. Kim, we need you in the strategy room," a young assistant called out. Juwoo nodded, and made her way to a large chamber where military officers and scientists gathered around a holographic display. General Jaehyun Kang stood at the head of the table, his uniform neat despite the long hours. "Let's review what we know," General Kang said as Ju took her seat. "Admiral Choi, your assessment." Admiral Duyong Choi, a veteran naval commander with gray at his temples, stood up. He pointed to images of the alien ships. "Based on our observations, their technology is at least 200 years ahead of ours," he said grimly. "Their ships have energy shields we can't penetrate with conventional weapons. Their weapons could destroy our military bases in minutes. Conventional warfare is futile." The room fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. Then Ju cleared her throat. "But I found something," she said, standing up. She tapped on her tablet, and the display changed to show complex wave patterns. Their communication systems operate on specific frequencies. There's a flaw, a precise harmonic vulnerability. If we generate the right counter-frequency, we could disrupt their communications completely. Engineer Min-Soo Ryu jumped up, unable to contain his excitement. He was younger than most in the room, a brilliant engineer who specialized in experimental propulsion systems. "And I detected something else," he said, changing the display again. "Their ship's propulsion systems show anomalous radiation patterns near the aft quadrants. It's like they have a blind spot in their shielding there. A precisely targeted burst of energy might cause a cascade failure." Hope began to spread through the room as people leaned forward to study the data. General Kang nodded slowly. "So we can't win a prolonged war, but we might deliver one devastating first strike." "Exactly," Ju said. "If we coordinate a global attack exploiting both weaknesses simultaneously, we might cripple enough of their fleet to force them to reconsider." Salman Lee, a quiet intelligence analyst who had been studying all available information about the hegemony, spoke up from the corner of the room. "I've compiled data from the ambassador's statements and their computer systems we've managed to access," she said. "The hegemony has conquered hundreds of worlds, but each species submitted individually. There's no record of them facing unified resistance from an entire planet. So we might surprise them," General Kang said thoughtfully. "There's something else," Salman added. "The hegemony seems to value efficiency above all else. If we can make conquering Earth too costly, they might decide we're not worth the resources." The strategy was taking shape. For the next several hours, they refined their plan. Earth would need to coordinate an attack using every available resource, while making the hegemony believe they were preparing to surrender. As dawn approached, President Min-Ho Lee joined them via secure video link. His face looked tired but determined. "The Security Council has reviewed your proposal," he said. "All nations have agreed to the plan. We will publicly accept integration while secretly preparing for your coordinated defense." General Kang saluted. "Thank you, Mr. President. We won't let humanity down." After the call ended, Ju stepped outside the strategy room to catch her breath. The weight of responsibility felt crushing. Min-Soo found her there, leaning against the wall. "Do you think it will work?" he asked quietly. "It has to," she replied. "We have one chance to show the hegemony that humans aren't like other species they've conquered." Over the next week, Earth's response took shape on two fronts. Publicly, world leaders announced acceptance of hegemony terms. Ambassador Krill received formal documentation agreeing to integration. Preparations began for the arrival ceremony. Behind this facade of compliance, the largest covered operation in human history unfolded. Underground facilities worked day and night building specialized disruptor devices designed by Juwoo's team. Military satellites were quietly repositioned. Every nation contributed their best technology and soldiers to the effort. 3 days before the integration fleet's arrival, Juwoo's team made a breakthrough. They successfully tested a communication disruptor on a small alien probe. The device froze for 30 seconds before its systems recovered. "It works," Juwoo exclaimed, hugging Min-Soo in excitement. "Now we need to scale it up by a factor of 1,000. Meanwhile, Military teams practiced deployment of special missiles designed to target the propulsion vulnerability Minsu had discovered. The weapons had to be perfectly synchronized to strike all ships at exactly the same moment. 2 days before the fleet's arrival, President Lee addressed the world. His official speech welcomed the new era of galactic integration. Hidden within his words were coded messages confirming that the defense plan was ready. That night, as Ju worked on final calibrations in the underground base, General Kang brought her a cup of coffee. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Scared," she admitted, "but ready." He nodded. In ancient times, Korean warriors were often outnumbered, but they studied their enemies and found ways to turn weakness into strength. "I hope we found enough of their weaknesses," Ju said. "We have something they don't expect," Kang replied. "The will to fight as one planet, not as separate nations." On the eve of the fleet's arrival, Earth appeared peaceful and compliant. Cities prepared welcome banners. Official integration and acceptance ceremonies were scheduled. Ambassador Krill reported to his superiors that Earth was showing typical pre-integration behavior. Deep underground and in hidden facilities around the world, humanity prepared its one chance at freedom. Soldiers said goodbye to families. Engineers made final adjustments to weapons. Scientists triple-checked calculations. As she finally fell into exhausted sleep, Ju thought of all the species that had surrendered to the hegemony without a fight. Tomorrow, Earth would show the galaxy something different. Tomorrow, humanity would stand as one. The morning sky filled with lights as the integration fleet arrived. 200 massive ships moved into Earth's orbit, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. People around the world looked up in fear, watching through telescopes, on television screens, and with their naked eyes. In the command center beneath Seoul, General Kang watched the fleet's formation on the main screen. His face remained calm, but his hands gripped the edge of the table tightly. "They're positioning exactly as we predicted," said Admiral Choi, pointing to the display. Main command vessel at the center, surrounded by defensive rings. Minsu checked the readings from their sensors. Energy signatures match our earlier scans. The propulsion vulnerability is consistent across all ships. Salman looked up from her station. Incoming transmission. Admiral Grask of the Hegemony requests the Earth delegation report to the main vessel for the integration ceremony. General Kang turned to Ju, who stood nearby in formal diplomatic clothes. "Are you sure about this? Once you're on their ship?" Ju nodded. "The plan depends on it. I need to buy us those crucial seconds and activate their main communication hub." "The transport tracker is secured under your collar," Minsu said, adjusting a tiny device hidden in Juwoo's clothing. "We'll be able to pull you out the moment you give the signal." President Lee entered the room with Secretary General Haijin Cho. Both wore grim expressions. "The Security Council has given final approval," President Lee announced. "All defense systems are in position. Dr. Kim, you are authorized to deliver Earth's response." Juwoo took a deep breath. "I won't let you down." Haijin stepped forward and hugged her. "Come back safely." The small delegation shuttle departed from the United Nations landing pad 1 hour later. Besides Juwoo, it carried 5 other representatives from different continents. Each person knew the plan and understood the risks. As they approached the massive Hegemony command ship, Juwoo gazed out the window. The alien vessel was enormous, easily 20 times the size of Earth's largest aircraft carrier. Its surface gleamed with strange lights and unknown technology. "Remember," she whispered to her fellow delegates, "whatever happens, show no fear." Their shuttle was guided into a large docking bay where rows of alien soldiers stood at attention. Each one resembled Ambassador Krill, but with more armor and weapons attached to their exoskeletons. A tall Hegemony official met them at the landing ramp. "I am First Lieutenant Rek. Follow me to the integration chamber. Admiral Grask awaits." They walked through corridors of gleaming metal, passing strange machines and aliens of different species. Juwoo noticed that some aliens wore different markings than the soldiers, perhaps other conquered species now serving the hegemony. The integration chamber was a vast round room with rising tiers of seats filled with hegemony officials. At the center stood a platform with a strange device that pulsed with blue light. Admiral Grask dominated the platform. Larger than Ambassador Krill, his exoskeleton was deep red with gold markings. 6 arms emerged from his torso, each ending in different tools or weapons. Earth delegates, his translator device boomed. You honor us with your prompt compliance. The integration device is prepared. Once activated, Earth will be officially recognized as hegemony territory. Juwu stepped forward as planned. Admiral Grask, as Earth's designated spokesperson, I request permission to address the assembly before the ceremony. Grask's compound eyes glittered. Unusual, but permitted. Be brief. Juwu walked to the center of the platform. She could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching her. The small device under her collar felt heavy with purpose. Behind her, the Earth delegates stood straight and proud. Honored representatives of the Galactic Hegemony, she began, her voice clear and strong. Today marks an important moment in your history. She paused, looking around the chamber slowly. We've studied your records extensively. For thousands of years, you've conquered worlds because no one fought back properly. A murmur ran through the alien audience. Admiral Grask shifted his posture. These statements are irrelevant, he said. Proceed to acceptance remarks. Juwu ignored him. Your success comes not from superior strength, but from the submission of others. You've never faced a truly unified resistance. This is typical pre-integration anxiety, Grask announced to the chamber. Many species experience this phase. Some of the aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Juwu stood taller. Humanity is different, she continued, her voice growing stronger. We will not surrender our planet. We will not be reduced. This is not a negotiation. Admiral Grask moved forward, looming over her. Your words are meaningless. The integration will proceed. Juwu looked directly into his alien eyes. This is your only warning. Leave our system now, or face the consequences. The chamber erupted with discordant sounds as the aliens reacted. Their translators couldn't keep up with the multiple voices, but their meaning was clear. They found her threat amusing. Admiral Grask raised his upper limbs for silence. No species has ever successfully resisted the hegemony. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our ships. Your warning is noted but irrelevant. Juwu allowed herself a small smile. She reached up as if adjusting her collar. Remember this day, she said clearly, as the one when you should have listened. She pressed the hidden device. Instantly, a signal flashed to Earth. At the same moment, a secondary signal, embedded in her diplomatic credentials, activated a cascade effect in the hegemony's main communication hub. For one crucial second, the aliens' internal communications flickered. Grask's translator sputtered, and the lights in the chamber dimmed momentarily. Juwu and the Earth delegates began to shimmer as the emergency transport activated. Her last view was of Admiral Grask lunging toward her, all 6 arms extended. Now, she shouted as they vanished. They materialized in the underground command center, surrounded by anxious faces. Did it work? General Kang demanded. Yes, Juwu said, steadying herself against a desk. Their main communication hub accepted our signal. The disruption should begin exactly as planned. Min-Su rushed to a console, confirming cascade effect in hegemony communications network. All ships showing disruption patterns. Defense grid activation in 3, 2, 1. Around the world, hidden weapons platforms powered up. Satellites changed position. Submarine-launched missiles rose from the oceans. Ground-based energy projectors aimed at the fleet above. On the main screen, they watched as Earth launched its response to the galactic hegemony. The moment of truth had arrived. The moment Juwu returned to Earth's command center, screens lit up across the wall. Every person in the room held their breath. This was humanity's one chance. Communication disruption successful, Min-Su called out. his fingers flying across his keyboard. "Their ships can't talk to each other." General Kang's voice rang out clearly. "Activate all platforms. Now." Around the world, hidden weapons powered up. Disguised satellites shifted position. Underground launchers opened. In the oceans, special submarines released their payloads. 217 orbital platforms, hidden from alien scans by special technology, suddenly appeared around Earth. They had been placed secretly over the last month, each carrying weapons designed to target the specific weakness in the hegemony ships. "All weapons locked on target," Admiral Choi announced. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. The platforms fired simultaneously. Beams of energy struck the alien ships precisely at their vulnerable propulsion points. At the same moment, the communication disruptors hit maximum power. On the main screen, they watched as bright explosions bloomed across space. Ship after ship lost power or broke apart. The mighty hegemony fleet, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, was caught completely by surprise. "Direct hits on 83 vessels," reported a technician. 40% of their fleet is disabled or destroyed. The remaining alien ships began moving erratically, trying to regroup without their communications. Some fired weapons blindly. Others began retreating from Earth orbit. "They're running," someone whispered in disbelief. Ju stared at the screen, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. The plan had worked better than they'd hoped. General Kang turned to President Lee. "Sir, should we pursue?" The president shook his head. "No. Let them go. We've made our point." "Prepare the broadcast," Hygen ordered. "Let's make sure the entire galaxy hears our message." Minutes later, Earth's most powerful transmitters sent a message outward in all directions, using the hegemony's own communication frequencies. "We are humanity. We refuse integration. Any force entering our system will be met with destruction." As the last alien ships disappeared from their sensors, cheers erupted throughout the command center. People hugged and cried. Some sat in stunned silence. For the first time in history, a species had successfully resisted the galactic hegemony. "What happens now?" Minsu asked Ju as celebrations continued around them. "Now we prepare," she replied. "They might come back with a bigger force." Earth remained on high alert for weeks. More defense platforms were built. The technology that had worked against the hegemony was improved and expanded. Every nation contributed to the global shield. 1 month passed. Then 2. No alien ships appeared. At the start of the 3rd month, Salman rushed into a meeting of the Earth Defense Council. "We're picking up a signal," she said breathlessly. "A single ship is approaching from the edge of our solar system." Everyone tensed. "Is it a hegemony vessel?" General Kang asked. "Yes, but it's broadcasting on an open frequency. They're requesting permission to approach and identifying themselves as a diplomatic vessel." President Lee frowned. "It could be a trick. Our scans show only one small ship." Admiral Choi reported. "No weapons signatures detected." After careful discussion, Earth allowed the ship to approach, but kept all defense systems ready. The alien vessel entered orbit and sent a shuttle to the United Nations headquarters. From it emerged a tall, slender alien different from the insect-like hegemony soldiers. This one had smooth blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. "I am Special Emissary Thrix," the alien announced through a translator. "I come with revised terms from the Hegemony Council." The meeting room was tense as Thrix presented a new document. "The hegemony proposes a different relationship with Earth," Thrix explained. "You have demonstrated unusual capabilities. The Council believes a more mutual arrangement would be beneficial." President Lee studied the alien carefully. "What kind of arrangement?" "A sovereign exception status. Earth would maintain its independence while gaining access to hegemony trade routes and technology. No resource extraction quotas. No population controls. No military obligations." The room fell silent. This was unprecedented. "Why this change?" Ju asked directly. Frix's four eyes blinked in sequence. The cost of forced integration has been calculated as excessive. After 2 weeks of careful negotiation and verification, a new agreement was drafted. Earth would remain independent, but would gain access to galactic knowledge and trade. Humans could travel to hegemony worlds as visitors or traders, not as subjects. On the day of signing, Ju stood beside President Lee in the Great Hall of the United Nations. Emissary Thrix placed a strange crystal on the document, which sealed the agreement according to hegemony tradition. As they completed the ceremony, Thrix leaned closer to Ju. "Your species has created a precedent," the alien said quietly. "Others are asking questions." "What do you mean?" Ju asked. "Not all integrated worlds are. Content. News of Earth's resistance has traveled far. The Council is concerned." 5 years later, humanity took its first steps into the wider galaxy. Earth ships, built with a mixture of human innovation and carefully studied alien technology, began exploring nearby star systems. Ju, now the head of Earth's Galactic Relations Department, received visitors from many worlds. Some came openly as official representatives. Others arrived secretly, seeking advice on how their own worlds might negotiate better terms with the hegemony. Throughout the galaxy, Earth became known as the Warning World, the planet that taught the hegemony that not all species would submit to integration. 10 years after the failed invasion, a ship arrived from a distant world called Nebulon. Its captain, a tall being with crystal-like skin, requested a private meeting with Ju. "My people freed themselves last month," the captain said proudly. "We followed Earth's example. The hegemony decided we too were not worth the effort of pacification." Ju smiled. "How many worlds have gained better terms now?" 17, with more negotiating each cycle. "It began with your warning." One voice that refused to be silenced. As the captain left, Ju looked up at the night sky. The stars no longer seemed threatening. Instead, they sparkled with possibility and hope, not just for humanity, but for all species who dreamed of charting their own path among the stars. The end.